ghost voices. So essentially when we do this, we have a very specific way of doing it. We'll pretend that we're doing an EVP session here really quickly. I take out my recorder and I say something along the lines of, we're speaking to the spirits here in this location that we can't see. We've come to communicate with you tonight. If you speak directly into this red light, we can hear you and help you. Please speak loudly and clearly, as it's the only way we can understand you. My first question is, I'll ask a question like, what is your name? Something very basic that comes through at that point. And then we leave 10 seconds of silence. The reason we leave 10 seconds of silence is to give them the opportunity to actually imprint their voice. And now the next person will ask a question, so on and so forth. If there's ever a noise in the room that takes place that's very obvious, like a dog barking or somebody talking in another room, we'll say note and whatever that is to help us eliminate the false positives. So then once we get back to the person with the recorder, we say, thank you very much for letting us be here today. Goodbye. And at that point, we go back and listen to the different types of EVP that we have. First type of EVP is called a Class A EVP, and that's the clearest type of EVP that's out there, and that basically means if you're listening to the recording played back and we ask the question, what is your name? And we hear, Bob. That's Bob. Hi, Bob. Class A EVP. Class B EVP is downgraded from there. Class C is downgraded even further. There's another type of EVP that's out there called a Class R EVP. We used to think that we were getting all kinds of strange Sumerian languages that were coming through and all sorts of different things until we got simple sound editing software. We found out that we take these things that didn't make sense, put them into sound editing software, flip them around, reverse them, and we'd have full human speech patterns in reverse. So we'd be able to go back and listen to them in English, Spanish, Chinese, whatever the case might be. They were full speech patterns in reverse. That's a Class R EVP. Class DER is direct electronic response, and basically what that is if we ask questions, you hear a series of scratches and pops in response to it. We had one of our researchers actually take one sound that came through in this. It's just a whoosh, that's what it sounded like. He took that sound, put it into sound editing software, stretched it out 30 times in a specific frequency. There was a full paragraph of human speech within that one little sound that was there. So this gives spirits the easiest way to imprint their voices, the most difficult for us to decipher it. Anyway, we discovered the direct electronic response EVP at a place called the Hearthstone Inn in Colorado Springs, Colorado. They invited us in to do an investigation. We showed up down there, didn't know anything about it. It was two huge Victorian mansions sitting side by side with a building that they put in the middle of it to connect the two of them. And we didn't know it at the time, but they used to use this place as a tuberculosis hospital in the 1800s. So we went in there and we just started asking random questions out into the air. And one of the questions I asked in a room called the Blue Room upstairs was, are you trapped here? And we heard the little boy's voice come through and say, like room.
Are you trapped here?
We heard that response come through. We went back into that location, and for a year and a half, we asked question after question after question. Finally put the story together about what had taken place. Turns out that this little boy did, in fact, die inside that location. His mother also died inside the location. The last thing she had said to him in life was, don't go anywhere without me. He had taken that to heart, and even in death had stayed there waiting for her to come back. She never returned. So basically, at that point, we went in, spoke to him, and explained it was time for him to move on, and he did move on.
What year were you born?
Was contacted by a man who just purchased a bar, and he said, can you please come in here and tell my staff that this place is not haunted? And I said, well, I can't just come in there and tell them it's not haunted. We need to do an investigation. So we talked several times on the phone. He invited us out there. Last time I talked to him, he goes, oh, yeah, by the way. He goes, I guess there's some old 1920s speakeasy upstairs, and some kind of crime happened. They boarded the place up. Nobody's been up there since the 1920s. You want to go up there? Duh. Yeah. We grabbed all the equipment. We got over there pretty quick. And it was amazing when we did get there. We pulled the wood off the doors. We pulled the wood off the windows. It was like going into a time capsule from the 1920s. There were newspapers on the floor. There were bottles on the floor. It was incredible. But the one thing that was definitely there was a crime scene that was intact. In one of the back bedrooms, there was buckshot in the wall and dried blood up the wall. And then in an adjacent room, there's what appeared to be dried brain matter on the ceiling. So we knew we were dealing with something interesting. So we got in there, and again, we started doing our investigation, the video, the pictures, EVP, and the EVPs revealed what took place. And this was a 3-year investigation that we did. Turns out that in the 1920s, there was a man who used to run this place. He was kind of like the caretaker of the upstairs. And there was a young woman who boarded there who had a very young son. And he used to flirt with her every single day. And it was just a playful thing that they used to do. But one day he'd been drinking. He got aggressive with her. She slapped him. She went back to the room, slammed the door. And apparently he got so upset that he took a shotgun, kicked in the door, and killed both the woman and her child inside the room. The thing he didn't realize at the time was there was always somebody at the front door and always somebody at the back door. There was no way he was going to get away with this crime. He couldn't get the bodies out. So at that point, he made the decision to turn the gun on himself, and that was the end of the story. But when we went in and we talked to the woman and the child, their spirits, they were confused, but once we explained what had happened, they moved on very quickly. The man was a completely different story. He believed that he was still alive. He He saw everything as it was in the 1920s. He had the bodies there, and he was still trying to hide the bodies. His reality was basically fearing being punished for what he had done. So when we go in and do the investigations, he'd actually become physically violent from time to time. And we actually used to have an investigator. She was about 5 foot tall, short brown hair. No matter what question she asked in an EVP session, he answered her the same way every single time. He said, "It's you." Because he believed that this woman was the spirit of the woman he had killed coming back to haunt him. Play that for you one more time.
What year were you born?
It's you.
Okay, we do a lot of investigations. We don't charge for investigations, and we don't ask about the history of the haunting when we go in. That might seem a little strange, but basically we want to go in with a blank slate and see what we find. Went into this woman's house, did find paranormal activity, presented it back to her, asked her if it made sense. She said, yes, it did. We told her, is there any way that you can explain the story about what might be happening? She said, I think I know what's going on. Turned out that her mother had actually passed away inside the house. She had cancer, and she died inside the house. Thing was is that Nancy and her mother were never close. And so basically, when I did the EVP session, I directed it at the mother, and I said, is there any last thing that you want to tell your daughter, Nancy? We played back the EVP. This is what we had. And once that played out through the speakers into the room, of course, Nancy broke down, started crying, but the activity stopped immediately because this is the last thing the mother had to pass on to her daughter. One of my favorite EVPs of all time. I'll give you the quick story back behind this one. My father, very skeptical man. Basically, when we started doing the investigations and he first started tagging along with us to do these things, he thought that it was hilarious, these investigations we were doing. He thought we were just crazy. And so I remember one day we were doing an EVP session inside of one of the old mansions that we were at, trying to speak to this woman's spirit. She would not come through. About midway through, he decided he got the idea that he was bored staying there, so he thought he'd move things along. Walked into the middle of our EVP session. He goes, "You really want her to talk?" And we said, "Yeah, that's why we're here." And he goes, "Hey, lady, what color are your underwear?" She talked. Now, a lot of people talk about hauntings having to do with houses or hotels or schools or whatever the case might be. It's really the land that holds the energy. You could tear the place down and the haunting will remain because essentially that energy is instilled into the rock. So we went in, we were doing an investigation of a basically brand new custom home that was built. These people said they had paranormal activity. We found they had activity, but we could not figure out why. So we started talking about all sorts of different things, possessed items. We talked about potentially having a spirit attached to one of the family members. And it was my mother, of all people, that said, you know what? Why don't we go and look at the land record? Lo and behold, we went and looked at the land record. Turns out that there was a house partially on this property before, burnt down, killing a family of 4. So we went in and started doing the EVP session, addressing them by name. And I asked the toddler, I said, do you know that this isn't your house anymore? And this is the response that came through. And at that point, we were able to explain to them and the family what had taken place, and they moved on very easily. It says, for Frank Sumption, the telephone to the dead.
My first question to you tonight, what is your name?
Ghost.
I know you're ghosts. Could I have the spirit of the woman come through that answered yes and tell us why she's suffering? She's possessed.
Is this your lover? One of these women your lover?
Okay, quick show of hands. How many people here are aware that Thomas Edison was working on a telephone to the dead before he passed away? Anybody? Got a couple of people. That's awesome. Yeah, nobody used to know this. Essentially, yeah, it does seem strange. Greatest inventor of all time, scientific mind. Why would Thomas Edison be working on a communication device with the other side? His mother was a spiritualist, and he was very close with her. And when she passed away, he started to re-examine his views on the afterlife. He decided that if energy could neither be created nor destroyed, it could only change form, we being energy. Basically, we had to go somewhere. So he thought he could build a machine that would not only bring through the personality of the people that were out there, but their actual voices. So he started working on this machine. He talked about it in Scientific American. He talked about it in Forbes. His contemporaries did not like him talking about this because they thought he was going to be considered crazy. So they tried to squash it the best that they could. When he did pass away, they did find the blueprint for the machine, but they never found the actual machine. And the most interesting thing about it is that they looked for all the notes that he had taken about this. They had been ripped out and destroyed. So it was a legend. Nobody knew if it was real or not. So how did I get involved in this thing? I was actually posting up on Yahoo groups. That's how old this is. I put up a posting on Yahoo groups, and I was looking for people to help us decipher EVP. And one man wrote me back by the name of Frank Sumption that said, "You're an idiot, you're a moron, you need to get out of the field," so on and so forth. It was a pretty brutal email that I got. And I wrote him back just as nasty of an email, and it probably started the greatest flame war in flame war history. The two of us fought back and forth daily for months. And eventually I decided I'd had enough of it, so I wrote him back one last email, and I said, "Frank, you stay on your side of the street, I'll stay on mine. Thank you very much." He wrote me back one last email, because that's just how Frank is. And he said, "You may wonder why I'm such an expert in EVP. I've actually completed Thomas Edison's Telephone to the Dead." And I laughed. And I wrote him back one last email. I was dead serious when I wrote it. I said, "If you've really done this, I will fly to any location that you are in the world to see this thing work one time." Turns out that he was 5 minutes from my office. Gotta love the internet. So, yeah, we decided we were going to go ahead and set up a formal meeting. And obviously the only place to have a formal meeting, anybody? International House of Pancakes, that's right. And my father and I got the suits on, we got the laptops together, and we showed up at IHOP, and Frank showed up just like that right there. And we walked in the room. He panicked a little bit, and once he was convinced that we weren't, CIA or FBI or any other government agency, he decided he could tell us the story of how this all came to be. And it's still the most incredible story I've ever heard in my entire life. So my father and I sat on one side of the booth, and he sat on the other. And he proceeded to tell us at that point that he'd always been a shortwave radio buff. He liked to mess around with shortwave radio. And he was an electrician that liked to build home electronics and things along those lines. So he'd been reading a 1995 Popular Science magazine article about the voices of the dead being done with shortwave radio experiment. And he built it just so that he could make it and then debunk it so he could write a letter to the magazine. Set the thing up, got ready to turn it on, flipped the thing on, and at that point, apparently, it called him by his first, middle, and last name. He shut it off, thinking he'd lost his mind. He walked away for about 6 months at that point, came back out of curiosity, I guess, and flipped the thing back on. And now, apparently, these voices were coming through and telling him not only his name, but how to complete Thomas Edison's Telephone to the Dead. Circuit boards, diodes, schematics, things along those lines. And Frank, being an eccentric guy, apparently listened to the voices that came through and built it to their specifications. And when he built it for the first time and flipped this thing on, those same voices were there, clearer than they were before, telling him how to build a better version of this device. Now, you have to kind of picture my father and I sitting across the booth room, kicking each other underneath the table the entire time he'd been telling the story, trying not to laugh. And I said, "Wow, Frank, that's an amazing story. Is there any way we could see this thing work sometime?" He goes, "Absolutely, come down to my workshop next weekend." Next weekend came. We showed up at his workshop, which, of course, was located in his basement. And we got down there, and the only way to describe this place is like a cross between a bad 1960s sci-fi movie and Deliverance, somewhere right in the middle of those two. Basically, there were wires hanging from the walls, speakers hanging from the walls. There were fur pelts. There were crossbows. And then just to complete the total insanity, as we walked into the main part of the room, there was a gigantic tinfoil pyramid hanging from the center of the ceiling. And I turned to my father and said, "We're not going to make it out alive." We walked into the room, and I looked over to my left, and there was a gigantic 1980s computer tower, one of those huge manila ones. And it looked like somebody had ripped off the faceplate, shoved in some wiring, made their own faceplate that didn't quite fit. And I told myself, "Oh, please tell me that's not it." He walks over, he goes, "This is it." I was like, "Oh." He goes, "You want to hear it work?" I said, "I guess." So he takes this big silver switch on the front, and he flips it up, and it makes the warm-up sound. You know the warm-up sound? Whoa, 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 whoa. And there's this little speaker sitting up on top of it. And it sounds like somebody's taking one of those old-timey radio dials and turning it back and forth. There's like white noise and radio fragment and all sorts of different things coming through. And I'm standing there watching this and listening to this, and all of a sudden it dawns on me. This man has built a broken radio, and he's convinced that he's talking to ghosts and aliens through it. It's probably time to go. So I look over at my father. He looks at me. I said, "Hey, Frank, thank you so much for inviting us out. This is amazing. We're going to go ahead and try to do a small article in the magazine. Thanks again. We're going to get going." He goes, "Wait!" And I went, "Oh, God." And he goes, "The voices said you're supposed to take this with you." The voices. So now I'm walking up to him, and I'm reaching for my wallet. I'm visibly shaking at this point. I'm like, "How much does somebody owe you for something like this, Frank?" He goes, "You don't get it, do you?" I said, "No." He goes, "I'm supposed to stay here and build these things. You're supposed to take this out and talk to ghosts." All righty then. I reached down and grabbed one half, which is about 100 pounds. My father got the other half, which is about another 100 pounds, and we got out of there as fast as we possibly could. We were driving a Jeep at the time. We threw it into the back of the Jeep. We did not set it, and we started driving away very quickly. And I don't know if you guys have ever had the near-death conversation before as you're driving away from a situation. Like, oh, man, did you see that? Oh, my God. And we're having one of those as we're driving away. And pretty soon, I started thinking to myself, this guy's kind of like a mad genius. What if he didn't build this telephone to the dead at all? What if he built like a dirty bomb, and we're driving away with it? And he's standing back there with a remote control, and he's like, telephone to the dead. We did not blow up, but we did take this thing, we shoved it in the front of the office, and it became the pick-me-up for the day. We'd walk in and see it and laugh a little bit, and then start the workday. So this sat there for a year, and we had a huge investigation coming up at the Sally House a year later, and basically this thing had been collecting dust the entire time. But the day I walked into the office and I was shutting it down for the holidays, I saw the thing sitting there, and I said, you know what, I'm going to see if this thing really works. So I turned on my recorder, set it on top of it, walked away for the day. End of the day, came back, got the recorder, plugged it in the computer, put on the big 1970s Princess Leia headphones, and listened to what was coming through. And at that point, it sounded like broken radio. So I started thinking about the case. I started thinking about the Sally House, the spirits, Atchison, Kansas, all the things we needed to do and accomplish. And pretty soon I realized I still have this broken radio sound going to my ear, and I thought, I got to shut this thing off. I went to go hit the stop button, and at that point it says, your trip to Atchison. Stop. Now, Atchison, Kansas is a little speck on the map no matter where you go. I'm sitting in Denver, Colorado. I'm like, what are the chances of a radio fragment coming through talking about my trip to Atchison when I'm going to be leaving for there in 3 days? So I go back. I didn't hear it right. Played it again. Your trip to Atchison. So fast forward, 3 days later, my mother, my father, and I are driving out to Atchison, Kansas with this huge piece of junk in the back, not knowing what we're going to do with it. The big idea that we came up with was we'll take it into the most active room in the house, turn it on during the day, leave, come back with the team that night, and see if anything's happening. So we got there. It was dusk. We decided we needed to hurry, so it was just my father and I. Got the machine together, raced up into the house, got up to the nursery, which is by far the most active room in the house. Plugged it in, turned it on, started making its broken radio sounds. We were getting ready to leave the room. All of a sudden, I make the realization, nobody's ever used this thing before. I should probably say something. So I'm standing there with my skeptical dad, and I'm standing in front of this machine. It was the idiot moment of my life. I'm like, if there's any ghosts here who want to talk, please speak through this thing that Frank built. It's good. I already heard stuff. Thank you. Technician's assist. My dad looks at me like I'm crazy, and we walked out of the room. We got about 2 steps down. All of a sudden from behind, we hear that noise, that white noise, sound. And I froze on the stairs just like this. Every hair on my body shoots up at that point. My father, I look over, and he's more hunched over than I am, so now I know it's time to panic. So basically at this point, it seemed like we stood there forever, but it was probably 20 seconds at the max. And then all of a sudden, over that white noise comes a voice, a male voice, and it says, Sally, listen. Now at this point, my fingernails dig into the wood on the banister, and I'm about on my knees at this point. My father is more hunched over than I am, and I'm panicking very badly. So the most amazing thing happens at this point. This little girl's voice that we captured dozens of times on open-air EVP comes through the speakers on the machine. This male entity, whatever you want to call it, was actually teaching her how to use the machine. We stood there till it was pitch black inside the house listening to this conversation go back and forth. Blew us away. So we finally pulled ourselves away, got every piece of recording equipment we had, pointed directly at the machine, and at that point, we're able to actually ask questions to the spirits. And when we'd ask a question, they'd respond in real time. It would come right through the speakers. So we were collecting evidence probably 15 years and 3 days that we were there. Wanted to tell everybody that I knew about this. It was the most amazing thing in the world. Had a live radio remote the next day from the Sally House over the phone from ASPRN Radio in Alabama. Dr. Jimmy Lowry called me up, said, hey, Chris, you out there at the Sally House? I said, I sure am, Jimmy. He goes, anybody get burned or scratched yet? I said, no, Jimmy, but I'll tell you what, I have this magic radio that brings through the voices of the dead. It's absolutely incredible. He goes, we're going to go ahead and take a break. Took me off the air at that point. And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, I know it sounds crazy, Jimmy, but this thing really works. He goes, man, you better stop talking about your dead radio. I said, Jimmy, it works. And he hung up the phone on me. EVP researcher, lunatic, 5 seconds. That's what happened. So the only thing I was still fortunate about, people came to my Ghost Hunter Universities, and I teach the class, and at the end of the class, I'd mention I was using this machine. People would look at me funny. But then we would actually take them on the investigation, and they would have the opportunity to use it, and they'd be sitting there amazed that they were actually talking to, Lizzie Borden and people along those lines. It was blowing people away. Every single time we did one of these events, one of our paying attendees, their relative who'd passed away, a dead relative, would actually come through the speakers of the machine and would call them out. So all of a sudden, you'd hear this voice that would come through the machine and go, Tommy? And somebody go, oh, my God, that's my grandma's voice. And I'd say, that's not why we're here. And they go, dude, that's my grandma. And it wasn't that I was trying to be mean at that point. It's just that wasn't the purpose that I had. So I don't know if you guys know Chip Coffey. He's a psychic. He does a lot of the TV shows. Long before the TV shows, we've been friends for a long time. And he was one of the few people that knew I was a psychic medium. So basically at that point, he'd contact me up and he would say, you know, you need to start using this machine to contact people and help them with their loved ones. I said, no, I don't want to do that. So basically, long story short, he tricked me. He invited me out to a conference in Savannah, Georgia, brought me out there and made me do a live presentation where I actually did readings for these 5 people who came up in front of everyone there through a PA system. Every single person there actually contacted a loved one. It was a huge experience. It was amazing. So at that point, I still didn't want to do the private readings. If you backtrack really quickly, if you remember when I said technicians assist, I realized that there were actually these spirits on the other side, these entities, these voices that were coming through. They worked almost like operators on the other side, where they would keep us moving. They'd actually bring through the people that we were trying to talk to, things along those lines. I called them spirit technicians. So one day, I was doing an intelligence session, and as I'm doing my intelligence session, I'm sitting there asking questions back and forth, and all of a sudden, over the speaker comes this voice, and it says, "My name is Tyler Trujillo. I'm your new spirit technician." Hi, Tyler. I mean, what do you say at that point? So nobody had ever introduced themselves before. So basically from that point forward, this voice, this personality would always come through every single time I used the device. And pretty soon it was like a friend, then a partner, then like a brother that I could really trust bringing us through to the people we wanted to speak with. So again, fast forward, I'm at the Stanley Hotel in Stanley Park, Colorado, and I'm up there and I'm doing another one of these events where people are winning raffle tickets, and they're actually coming forward at that point, and they're speaking to their loved ones. And the last woman of the night comes up with a raffle ticket. She sits down in front of me, Chip's there with me, and she sits down and she goes, "I'd like to speak to my son." I said, "Okay, great." So we start having a conversation. She says, "Are you playing with your cars and trucks?" And I said, "Yeah, it's apparently something about cars and trucks, yeah." And all of a sudden, it's like somebody smacks me upside the back of my head, and I looked at her, I said, "Is your son's name Tyler Trujillo?" And she goes, "Ah!" And I went, "Ah!" Because we make the realization at that point that her son is my spirit technician. Blew me away. Turned out that she'd lost Tyler in a car accident at the age of 18 just a couple of years prior. She had no intention of coming and seeing a medium and doing this kind of reading, but he came to her in a dream that night before and said, "Mom, you have to go see this guy. I'm connecting heaven and earth. I want to show you how." And she knew at that point that she had to go, and she knew she was going to win a raffle ticket that night. So it turns out that Tyler never had a job in his entire life, but on his websites he used to put down for occupation technician, which blew me away. And then the other thing that he used to do is he used to belong to this guy, Frank Sumption Shortwave Radio Club, while he was alive. So all these things together were just absolutely incredible. I've never been closer to another individual in my life, and I have never met Tyler. He is eternally 18. His personality is absolutely amazing. Sometimes on these events, we'll actually do a ghost hunt after we do the presentation. And when we go out, people actually have the opportunity to talk to Tyler, to speak to him, and you really get to kind of know him at that point. So it's pretty amazing. This is the device now. It's no longer that gigantic 100-pound machine. It's down to a small portable device that runs on gel cell batteries. It's portable. You can carry it anywhere that you go. It's a lot easier to use, and it's much clearer than the original devices that we had out there. So, it's definitely the technology's getting better. Oh, locked up. Knew it was too easy. Excuse me. It's Halloween, guys. Paranormal. Okay, now, excuse me, I'm going to have to switch things back there. Thank you. These are the usual faces of people when they first hear the device work. Notice the cab T-shirts. And this is Tyler. I'd just like everybody to see a picture of him. This is actually a picture his mother gave me of him quite a while ago. I just like everybody to kind of know he was a living, breathing human being, and he's eternally 18 on this side. He's kind of a smart ass, but two of us fight back and forth like brothers. But I absolutely love the guy. If you ever want to get in touch with me, best way to do it. Spirit photography. People have been faking ghost pictures ever since the beginning of photography. This is a fake ghost picture. This is a real ghost picture. This is taken at a place called the Mason House in Bentonsport, Iowa. This is in room 5. We were doing a live telephone to the dead session while we were there. You can see the box in there, and then me in the mirror right here. Back behind me is Joy Hansen. We had a very intense session that night. She's actually one of the owners. And we went back and looked at the still pictures we got, and you can see the hooded figure that actually appeared up over her head at that point. So that would be an actual ghost picture. Paraforensics, yes, in fact, we do work with law enforcement agencies from time to time. This particular structure, which is now a bed and breakfast, used to be the scene of a double homicide, unsolved. 2 girls were brutally slain inside this location. We started using the telephone to the dead to communicate with the girls. The girls started coming through and giving us very specific information about the case. We started releasing that back through the media. The police became interested in what we were doing, thinking that we had some kind of hoax going on. So they showed up just to find out what we were really doing, brought in a sealed file, started asking questions from the sealed file, and the girls actually answered all of those questions and added information into it. So at that point, they actually opened it up as an active cold case, and we're hoping that this will be solved very, very soon. The person of interest in the case, surprisingly enough, actually showed up to one of our events just to see how much we really knew, and through the device, the girls called him out by name. So it is pretty amazing how it's coming together. Does anybody see anything interesting in this picture? Anything in the window? The house was completely empty at the time. It took me a long time to go back and actually see what was there. Pretty amazing stuff. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys a few questions here for ghost hunting protocol. Never investigate alone. Why? Could be dangerous. It was so funny. I was in North Dakota. I was touring a few weeks back in North Dakota, and I asked that question. I said, never investigate alone. Why? And some guy from the back goes, because you'll die. I was like, wow, way to jump to the end. All right, yeah, no. Yeah, it's safety issues definitely, but the main reason in ghost hunting that we do it is because you have to have a witness. That's not real evidence unless there was a witness there. Very, very important. Always ask permission when investigating on or around private property. Why? Because you'll die, yeah. I always tell people it sucks to be arrested. It really sucks to be shot. So those are the two main things. Yeah, you don't want to do that. No drinking, smoking, or drugs. Why? Oh, I'm going to remember that. That's one thing. But what's the first thing that somebody says to you when you say, you saw a ghost? What do they tell you? What are you, high? Especially when you're from Colorado, believe me, that's a big thing. So you got to be really careful about that one. But basically, having a cigarette on an investigation, right? What's that going to do? It's going to kill you eventually, but what's it going to do on your investigation that's not good? What's it going to do? Yeah? And what do cigarettes do? You got the smell that comes off of it, right? And then we got the pictures, right? Absolutely, false positive. So people send me evidence all the time, and they basically say, hey, is this real or can you debunk it? And I love doing that. That's my favorite thing to do. But I get like a standard stock email 4 or 5 times a year. Subject line's usually like 3 a.m. in the cemetery, 3 a.m. in the graveyard, something like that. And then the body of the email always has to start the same way. It always has to be, dude, me and my friends were out in the cemetery the other night. We got this crazy picture. Now we think Todd's being followed by a demon. Help, right? So I open up the attachment, and I'll do my recreation of what I see in the attachment picture. Essentially, you get the guy with his beer. Somebody else running across the cemetery like this, right? And then you've got the girl who's like right in front of the camera with her cigarette and a big puff of smoke coming off of it. Well, there's Todd's demon right there, but you still have to go back through all the questioning. So you go and ask all the questions, was anybody smoking? Mystery solved. Now, same email, same picture, nobody smoking. Dun, dun, dun. So you have to go back through it again, and you got to say, okay, was anybody smoking? No. Okay, where are you located? Montana. Okay. What time of the year was this? January. Okay. What would you say the temperature was at the time? -10 with the wind chill. Was anybody breathing? Yes. Frozen breath, cigarette smoke, same thing. Yeah, absolutely. In pictures, looks exactly the same. So you got to be very, very cautious when you're doing that. No perfume or aftershave. I'm just going to tell you this one right off the bat. I don't care what side, if you're on the skeptical side or the believer, whatever the case might be. How many times are you driving in the car, sitting in class, work, whatever, and all of a sudden you smell your grandma's cookies, your aunt's perfume, something that immediately takes you back to a time that you remember that person, you think about them right then and there. This is the first way that spirits will attempt to communicate with you. Scent is the strongest sense we have and the longest lasting sense we have, and that's why spirits use it to communicate with us. Always be respectful of the spirits. This is something I learned a long time ago. Basically, you give respect, you get respect. It works in this world, it works in the next world too. And I've been on all the TV shows. I've done Paranormal State and this and that, Ghost Adventures, blah, 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 blah. But they drive me absolutely crazy. And the reason for it, I don't know if you guys watch these shows, but I'll give you kind of the model for the show. There's a guy in a really tight T-shirt, kind of a douchey haircut. He locks himself in a building with a lot of sharp weaponry, right? At that point, stands in the middle of the room, and he goes, burn me, scratch me, cut me, I dare you, right? Nothing ever really happens, nothing real at least. And he can't quite figure out why. Well, the reason behind it is that all you have to do is give respect. If you ask them to do something, most of the time they actually will do it, believe it or not. So I tell everybody, just be respectful of the spirits and then record all of your readings and weather conditions. Here's the Ghost Hunter Starter Kit. I'm not going to go through all this stuff. Have you guys ever seen night vision video, though? Basically, everybody's green, eyes, teeth. That's basically it at that point. I didn't think there was a whole lot to this. Do we have any animal lovers here with us today? Okay, awesome. That's me too. I have a small farm inside my house. So at the time, I had 2 cats when this happened. I was sitting there, I was watching TV, and one of my cats was up on top of the chair, and he did one of these kind of things when he's up on top of the chair. I said, what the hell? I could not figure out what was happening with my cat at that point. So I called up a scientist friend of mine a couple of days later, and I said, can you please explain to me what's happening with my cat? And he said something like, there's an endorphin that's being released in the cat's brain. It's causing a state of euphoria. The cat's responding to the stimuli, blah, 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 blah. And I went, enough. So I grabbed my night vision video camera. I head to my parents' house, which I call the paranormal laboratory, found their cat, turned on the camera, and followed that cat everywhere it went. Freaked that poor cat out. Just followed him everywhere he went. Like many of my experiments, I thought this one was going to fail. One night I was down in their basement just playing around on their computer, and all of a sudden from around the corner I heard the bells on the collar. And I went, ah, and I jumped up with my camera. I ran around the corner, and there's the cat absolutely freaking out in the middle of the floor, and I went, yes. So I turned on the camera as quick as I can, and I look, and lo and behold, there's all these little lights that are floating around the cat. The cat's batting at them, moving them, tracking them. I pull the camera away. There's nothing there. Put it back. There it is. I realized at that moment that just because we can't see it with our own eyes doesn't mean it's not there. Basically, animals see things in a completely different spectrum. That's why we use night vision video. They have a good sense to tell us what's there. Okay, here's some of the software we use. If you've ever typed ghost into a search engine, you're going to get about 1 billion of these things that come popping up, orbs. You get the scientific community that has one side of it, which basically they say false positives all the way around, dust, moisture, that's all there is to it. On the other side, you have the psychic community that basically says they're fairies and angels. So, yeah, no. I'm not going to be able to go into the full description. I know we're running a little bit behind, but I will tell you this. If you're ever fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to be involved in the hospice process, there is something that happens when people die. Basically, when people do pass away, they lose a very small amount of weight. Science cannot account for where this weight goes. It's not liquid. It's not air. It just disappears. We believe that this is actual spirit energy that can be measured and weighed. And at that point, when you actually see someone pass, you will always see a flash of light that takes place. We believe that that's the spirit energy leaving the body. And what happens at that point is there's a vortex that opens up. Basically, some people call it the gate, the doorway, whatever the case might be. But spirits will move through this light. They move on to the other side. They know who they are. They know where they are. And they can communicate with us and come and go as they please. That's what we call an intelligent spirit. The other type of spirit that we deal with is someone that we call an earthbound spirit. And I'm sure you've all heard this through the Hollywood terms, but basically the way we define an earthbound spirit is a little bit different. Essentially what that means is somebody leaves their body, moves towards the light, makes the decision not to move through the light. They basically go into what Catholics call purgatory, which means they've blocked themselves off from this world and the next world. They're in an existence where there's no time, there's no companionship, and all they do is go through the regrets of what they did or didn't do in this lifetime. The light's always there, but they're always afraid to move through it. So when you talk to an earthbound spirit, and we do talk to several earthbound spirits, they will tell you that they fear fire and brimstone punishment on the other side, some sort of hell that's there. And the interesting thing is if you talk to an intelligent spirit, one that has moved through, they'll tell you that there is no fire and brimstone on the other side. They're in a self-punishment in that middle ground. So Tyler and I will actually go through and actually work with these spirits and help to move them on. We have a very specific exercise that we use to try to move them on. We never force them, but we do ask them if they want to move on. Does anybody see the face in this one? Some people do, some people don't. Got it? Right here? Tilted? You got it. Absolutely. I want to show you a quick video. Okay, the reason that that video was shot is because the parents were trying to prove to their kids that there was no such thing as their imaginary friends. Now think about that for a second. How many of us have imaginary friends, right, when we were growing up? Okay. So many people used to contact us at the magazine that we actually did a study on it. And what we would do is people that claimed that their kids had imaginary friends, we would go into those locations, we'd talk to the kids, and we'd show them dozens and dozens of pictures. And we'd slip some pretty specific pictures in there. Little bit less than 80% of the time, children would actually go in and pick out relatives that they never saw or met in their lifetime, great-grandmothers, great-grandfathers, things along those lines. Kids would actually say that they were their imaginary friends. They'd actually pick out people who had died inside the homes, things along those lines. So children see what's there, see what's in front of them. The thing is that our brain waves don't change until the age of 8 or 9, and at that point we lose some of that ability. So the next time a child tells you that they're seeing and experiencing something, definitely pay attention. They probably are. Okay, here is a mist in a cemetery. This is an actual vortex in a cemetery. You can actually see the full structure here, right in the center. And this is the Holy Grail. This is the full-bodied apparition. Now, the question is if you're no longer in the human form on the other side, why do you show yourself in the human form? Main reason is that you need to contact somebody over here, so you project yourself out as that form so they recognize you and pay attention. That's the main reason. The other type of reason is that somebody believes that the world simply cannot survive without their beauty. That was the case with this one. We were doing an investigation of an old mansion they had turned into a cigar bar. Did the entire investigation, wrapped up for the end of the day. At that point, the busboy comes up to us and says, "Hey, did you guys get the lady in white?" I said, "No, not this time. Maybe next." He said, "No, seriously, it's the former owner of the mansion. She will show herself to you if you ask." So we took advantage of it. Jeff stood in back with the stairwell with a camera. I took my EMF meter, which makes a noise if something moves in front of it, and went to the very back of the room. Started walking forward, and I said, "We understand you're very beautiful. If you move in front of this machine I'm holding in my hand, it'll make a sound. We'll be able to take your picture and have it forever." So as I'm walking forward, I feel a pinching on my shoulder. And when I feel that, I know that they're draining energy directly from me at that point. And basically, I'll usually end up in a face plant. But this time, the meter went off right about that time. Snapped the picture, went back, and looked at what we had. We had a pretty crazy picture. We couldn't quite figure out what we had at first. But first thing I noticed right off the bat was this discoloration that took place down here, and I thought, looks like some sort of dress maybe. But the thing that was very clear is that we had the meter here. You could see the full skeletal arm and hand gripping the front of the meter at that point, which of course made it go off, but we didn't have a head. So everybody kind of goes off on their own, and I start looking at the picture. I'm like, yeah, this definitely looks like a dress. This is absolutely an arm, no question there. This is where the energy was being drained off of me at that point. Why don't we have a head? Then I realized we actually did have a head. It just wasn't in the spot that we'd expected. It was right up here. And what we realized is that as we snapped the picture, the head was still in the process of projecting back down to this point. And this really backed up a lot of theories that we had that spirit energy has to project out its former image. So that was a definite theory that worked for us. Here's a quick wrap-up. Always be an open-minded skeptic. Understand the odds of evidence. Beware of dust, mites, and rain. Take notes of cold spots, hot spots, and scents. Always watch and listen to your meter. Remember to check your VP thoroughly and do unto the others as you'd have them do unto you. Always be respectful. You guys want to see a couple of pictures before we go? I know we're running behind, but I want to show you a couple of cool things. Okay, Peabody Mansion. A lot of people talk about demonic. Everybody has demon, demon, demon. In all the cases I've done, I've been fortunate enough to literally do thousands of cases. Less than 100 have had anything to do with the demonic. This is one of those cases that actually had to do with the demonic. This is the Peabody Mansion, Denver, Colorado. Filming a documentary there. The idea that I had to film the documentary is that we knew several children's spirits were inside the location. The demonic entity was actually using these children's spirits for energy. So we went in and we're trying to pull them out. I was standing on the third floor down a long hallway. I actually had my back to a window, and I was pulling the children's spirits out one by one using the telephone. 3 children's spirits came through. The 4th refused to go. They said that they were too scared to leave. I said, "Don't worry, he can't hurt you anymore." At that point, I felt a pressure in the center of my chest. I was actually pushed up against the window. I came up off my feet, and it took the producer and my father to come in and hold me back in from the window. We went back and looked at the still that came through when that happened, and you could see the energy that hit me right at that moment. So, yeah, I tell people, just because we don't deal with it on a consistent basis doesn't mean it's not real. You have to be very, very careful while you're out there. Boo. Just like to throw that one in there. It's Halloween. You got to, right? Okay. Sally House. I'm not going to get into this entire case, but I went out to debunk this case. I usually don't do that. But there was a show called Sightings in the 90s that talked about a man who was inside this house, and he claimed that he was being scratched by an unseen spirit inside the house on camera. We thought this was all Hollywood trickery until we actually got there the first time and found out that, no, it was very, very real. These spirits there were very, very brutal. So basically, here's some pictures from it. This was on our first investigation. One of our investigators, Kevin, was up in the main master bedroom. He was scratched while he was upstairs by an unseen force. This is one of the first versions of the telephone that I was telling you about earlier. This is Tony Pickman's arm. This is the man who made all the claims about being scratched. And we actually went to his new home. We were sitting down doing an interview with him, talking about all the experiences that we'd had inside the house, asking if things correlated. So he's telling us a lot of different things that happened that he had never told anyone. My mother's an empath, a psychic, and she was sitting next to him. She grabbed him by the arm. She goes, "Tony, you can never go back in that house again. You're the catalyst. You're the reason this is happening." He goes, "Ma'am, I don't even drive by that house anymore. You don't have to worry about that." So we continued talking for a few minutes, and all of a sudden, he got the strangest look on his face. He put both of his arms up on the table, and we're like, "What's wrong with you?" We watched as he was scratched brutally by this spirit. It was just absolutely incredible. We watched him being attacked, as basically you'd see the red appear, then you'd see the welts, and then you'd see the blood appear. It was incredible. So we actually were able to film the entire thing, and one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. This is my mom. You can see she's got a friend over her head. They were carving a stick figure into his arm at one point. Somebody hiding around the corner. Does anybody see the face in the window here? This is taken up in the nursery. Yeah, somebody was peering in as we were doing our investigation that night. We did find out that the little girl's body is still inside the location. We found a sealed room on the back of the house that used to be the front of the house. We were able to get a flashlight in. We did see the crumpled body in the corner. We went back to the owners and told them, you know, she's still here. They said, please never come back to our house again. Missed. Another attack. And my father will tell you that this is me running from the house at this point. I promise I was not running. I was walking. Okay. Quick one for the animal lovers. I'm going to go through this very quickly. Hotel Vendome, Prescott, Arizona, they contacted us, said, please come out and do a Ghost Hunter University. Didn't want to do it because we never did an investigation there, but they convinced us to come out anyway. Went out and did an investigation the night before the event. Very silent until we got up to one room. Got up to this room on the front of the hotel. Everything went crazy. Got a lot of pictures, videos, EVPs. And so we went back to the owner. We said, does this make any sense? She said, yeah, this is where everybody gets their evidence. We said, okay, do you have any idea why? She told us a story about a woman who used to own the hotel, late 1800s. Her name was Abby, tuberculosis, very, very ill. Her and her husband owned the hotel. She had a cat named Noble. And essentially, she lost the hotel to back taxes because they couldn't keep it up. So one day, they came and took the hotel. The new owners actually came, felt sorry for her, and let her and her husband stay there and run the hotel for room and board. So one day she was very, very sick, and her husband went out to go get her medication. Left, got the medication, and never came back. Completely abandoned her. She waited several days for him to come back. Eventually, she got depressed, took her cat Noble up into the room, barred the door, and wouldn't let anybody come in. Eventually, they called the sheriff because they couldn't get the door open. Sheriff came in, broke down the door. Lo and behold, there was Abby dead with her cat Noble dead inside the room. So that was the sad story. So we did the investigation the next day. We did the event, and we brought everybody in small groups. And after we got done doing that, we went back across the street to a restaurant. We're doing a review, kind of like we're doing right now. We were just putting up the different pictures we got that day. And one of the last pictures I brought up was this one here. It was that room. And the room was actually completely dark. A flash is what lit up the room at that point. And I flipped to this one. I said, oh, wow, hey, look, that's some strong energy. Maybe that's the woman Abby. And everybody said, yeah, maybe. And I was getting ready to flip the picture. My mom over here goes, wait a minute, what's on my vest? And I said, what are you talking about? She goes, there's something on my vest. I said, yeah, you got a name tag, you got a flashlight, get another flashlight. She goes, that last thing's not a flashlight. And I said, well, what is it? She goes, can you please zoom in on that? So I did. What is that? That's a cat. Absolutely. This blew me away. You can see the eyes, the nose, the ears, the marking on the head. At this point, this was huge for me being an animal lover. I thought, this is incredible. Animals do stay with us into the next world. This was my confirmation. It was really great. And my mother, the psychic, walks up to me. She goes, my cat's going to die. I was like, oh, come on, don't wreck this for me. So her cat died. And at that point, she was very depressed. And our marketing director showed up at her house with this little guy right here. And she said, this is my Noble. And she named him Noble at that point. Noble still lives today. And this is my daughter at age 9. She's going to be 17 in December. And probably the most paranormal experience I've ever had in my entire life is the transformation from age 9 to 17. I'm pretty convinced there's aliens involved or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, we'll figure it out one day. Okay, Lizzie Bordenhouse. Is anybody familiar with this case? Anybody know the nursery rhyme? Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Now, I just thought this was like a nice nursery rhyme you put your kids to bed at night by. But no, it's not. So I was doing a convention in Las Vegas, and this very strange woman came up to me. She goes, hello. And I was like, hello. And she said, I've just purchased the Lizzie Borden house, and I'm turning it into a bed and breakfast. Okay. And she said, would you like to do one of your Ghost Hunter Universities there? I said, yeah, sure, why not? So I didn't even know if this was a real thing. So I called up my mom, the psychic, the historian. I said, is this a real deal? She goes, yes, it's real. It's amazing. And so she told me the story. Essentially, this is Fall River, Massachusetts, late 1800s. This is the Lizzie Borden house. This is Lizzie Borden. Lizzie was actually accused of chopping up her stepmother in the upstairs bedroom. And her father in the parlor downstairs. Sorry about the pizza and all that, but yeah, he was chopped up downstairs in the parlor. But she was accused of this crime. And she was taken into custody, held for a year. She stood trial, and a group of her peers, which were all gentlemen at the time, decided that a young Victorian woman couldn't possibly possess the rage or strength to carry out such a crime. So she inherited a lot of money, and she lived up on top of the hill for the rest of her life. And people always ask the question, did Lizzie Borden do it? So it was a mystery, and all my investigative friends were contacting me before we went in and said, you got to find out if Lizzie Borden did it. You got to find out if Lizzie Borden did it. I said, I don't want to find out if Lizzie Borden did it. I want to find out why Lizzie Borden did it. So we got out, and we actually did the class that day. It was all new attendees that we had there, which was great. And we finally got to the investigation, which was the part I was looking forward to. And usually I'm very cautious about using the telephone. I asked for my spirit technician to come through, and I'm very, very safe about it. But this time I was like a little kid in a candy store. We're down in the basement. I flipped the machine, and I said, Lizzie, are you there? Lizzie. And all of a sudden this man comes through in this really deep New England accent, and he starts cursing me out in a way I've never been cursed out before. I was taken back, and every attendee in the room looked at me like, does this happen every single time? And basically at that point, I realized that this is Andrew Borden that's coming through. And I said, oh, sir, we're not here to disrespect you. We just want to learn about what took place, about what happened to you. If you could help us with it, it would be great. And he continued to curse me out in this New England accent. So we found out very quickly other spirits started coming through. Turns out that Andrew Borden was probably one of the most sick, disgusting human beings who's ever walked the face of the earth. If there's ever been a justifiable homicide that's happened, it happened to this man right here. The things he did to the townspeople, bad, really bad. The things he did to his daughters, inexcusable, disgusting human being. So at this point, being a father, I started getting upset, and pretty soon was starting to have an argument with the machine. I'm screaming back and forth, he's screaming back at me, and the poor attendees in the room were like pinned up against the wall, just panicked at this point. So when we finally ended up finishing up the investigation, we went to bed inside the house that night. We weren't quite sure what to expect. My mother actually slept in his bed in the main master bedroom upstairs, and I actually slept in a room which is called the dressing closet, which is a room unto itself. So that night I closed the door, I shut off the light, I'm laying in the bed. All I could see was the street lights coming in off the street, and I'm laying there and I'm thinking about the case. And I'm thinking about, wow, that was just crazy. I did not expect any of that. I better get some sleep. So I rolled over and I started getting comfortable on my side. And pretty soon in my ear I heard, don't turn your back. Once I started breathing again, calmed myself down, realized where I was, and said, you know what, it's probably overactive imagination. I really just need to calm myself down. So I rolled onto my other side and I started going into that nice REM sleep, and I heard clearly in my ear, don't turn your back. I slept on my back that night. And I finally did fall asleep. About midway through the night, I woke up to, I'm gripping my neck. I cannot breathe. There's something around my neck, and I'm reaching for it, but it's not there. I stand up out of the bed. I fall against the wall, and I'm gasping for air at this point. Pretty soon, I realize where I am. I'm like, waking nightmare, Lizzie Borden house, double homicide, relax. So I start catching my breath. Eventually, I fall back into the bed, and I go to sleep for the rest of the night. Get up in the morning. I open up the door. My mom's pacing back and forth in the other room, and I'm like, what's going on? She goes, I barely slept. I said, why? She goes, all night long, somebody's in my ear about, don't turn your back. I was like, oh my God, I had the same experience. So we start talking back and forth. I'm all excited. And pretty soon she just stops cold. And she goes, and the mom eye, you know the mom eye? And I'm like, what'd I do? She goes, what happened to your neck? What are you talking about? She goes, what the hell happened to your neck? She's pushing me at this mirror. I'm like, what are you talking about? I get up to the mirror. I have a rope burn all the way around my neck. We don't sleep at the Lizzie Borden house anymore. But we still do events there. And we did one of our larger events out in the barn, and we actually had a honeymoon couple that showed up, as weird as that sounds. And basically at that point, this guy gets bigger every time I tell the story, but essentially he was about 6'5", 250, big bald guy, did not want to be there. The only reason he was there is because his wife wanted to come to this event. She was really into the paranormal. They walk up and introduce themselves, and the first thing she says to me in front of him is she goes, oh my God, Chris, this is like the most exciting part of the honeymoon for me. I was like, I just saw a target right here. So at that point, we went through the class that day, and she was really into it. He wanted nothing to do with it, and basically he was bored out of his mind. So that night, we were going in to do the investigation inside the house. As we're walking into the house, he's doing every horror movie cliche he can imagine. He's like, get out, the whole thing. And I turned to him and I said, hey, I understand that this doesn't mean anything to you, but seriously, there's been some really bad things that have happened here. If you could please be respectful, we'd appreciate it. He goes, whatever. I went, okay. So we went upstairs, we went up into the Morse room, and that's the room where the stepmother was murdered. Turn off all the lights at that point. We shut the blinds, we do the whole thing, make sure the room's completely pitch black, and I stand in the spot where the woman was actually murdered, and she usually will respond over EVP and talk to us about what had happened. So we start the session, and I start saying, we're speaking to the spirits here in this location. We hear, I'm like, note, someone's speaking. This happens 4 and 5 times. Finally, I'm like, turn on the lights. So the lights come flying on, and it's the woman from the honeymoon couple, and she comes up with her camera. She goes, oh, my God, Chris, I'm so sorry. My camera's not working. The flash isn't working. I'm so sorry. I just want to get good pictures. That's my fault. I talked. I said, it's okay. We're going into the basement. We're doing telephone to the dead session. All the lights will be on. You'll get your picture. She goes, okay. So we went downstairs into the basement, and there's the main part of the basement, and then there's the washroom part of the basement where you kind of see right here. And essentially, we go into the washroom area because that's where Andrew Borden did a lot of his nasty things. So basically, at this point, to kind of set this up for you, I'm standing here in front of the wash basin with a little blue device, one of the telephones, and I'm actually trying to talk to him. Over here, we've got one of our attendees who's got 1 foot in the room and 1 foot in the other room, and she's in the sprint position. If anything happens, she's out at that point. She's ready to go. Back behind her is the honeymoon couple. She's got the camera out. She's very intense. He's picking at his fingernails and looking at the ceiling. Back behind them is like a rack of food and supplies and things like that. So basically, this is how it goes. I said, Andrew, why did you do it? The woman over here in the sprint position does this. Back behind them, the woman and the man from the honeymoon couple, the man is lifted off of his feet and thrown back into the rack of food and supplies. Down he goes. Down go the food and supplies. Everybody backs away at that point. He finally gets to his feet, tears welled up in his eyes, lifts his shirt, and he has a perfect round burn in the center of his chest. Chaos ensues. People start trampling each other to get out of this location. And then up comes the woman from the honeymoon couple to me, and she's like, hey, Chris, take a look at this picture I got. Like, zero concern for this guy. So she walks up to me, she's like, okay, remember when we were upstairs and my flash was on? I said, yeah, I remember the whole thing. Yeah, it's fine. I'm still shaken by the situation. She's like, okay, well, I was getting ready to erase this picture, but I think there might be something there, so I wanted you to look at it. So I said, okay, yeah, sure. So she shows me the viewfinder, and essentially that's what it looks like. And I said, it looks like some light. And she goes, yeah, but there was no light in the room. I said, yeah, that's true. She goes, can we blow it up? So we started to blow it up a little bit, and it started becoming clearer. Then we blew it up all the way, and it became very clear. That is the full-bodied apparition head of Mr. Andrew Borden. You can see the forehead, you can see the eyes, the nose, the scowl, the beard, the whole thing. Just to show you what he looked like in life, we've actually superimposed a picture of him onto this one so you can make the comparison for yourself. I have no idea what Andrew Borden had planned for me that night, but I am glad I am not the one who got it. I'm glad the big guy got it. Mr. Borden, one more time, recently did an event at the Lizzie Borden house. We were downstairs, and I was actually sitting in the spot where he was murdered doing an EVP session. I got an email from one of my attendees a little bit later on, and basically the email said, what's missing, and an attachment. And I said, what do you mean, what's missing? So I flipped open the picture. I seem to be missing a head, yeah. Notice you can kind of just see through my face at that point. So it looks like the similar injuries that Mr. Andrew Borden sustained while he was alive. And I just take it that he misses me very much, and he's expecting that I'll be back very, very soon. Can't wait to talk again. So, yeah, that was a very interesting picture. I wanted to show you one more that we got while we were on. Actually, it's been this tour. I was at Carroll College and Carroll University, and we're doing an investigation after the presentation. We went out on campus, and we were just snapping pictures to see what was there. Getting ready to walk into a hall called Voorhees Hall. And we're walking in there, and I could just feel things all around us. It was like there was energy all around. So I was just snapping pictures left and right. And I snapped this picture. And you can see the gigantic head that appeared over the entire crowd and the vortex that was opening up at the time that brought him through. Now, as we did the session, we actually found out that his name is Walter, and he talked to us for almost 2 solid hours about when he used to go to the school and about what he used to do there. So, yeah, we do usually get some pretty good results, but this poor girl had no idea who was over the top of her at that point. Okay, so if you guys ever want to get in touch with me, these are the best ways. That's my phone number. That's my email address if you ever want to send me evidence. Facebook, I'm on there a couple of times. Twitter, Man is the Moon, I told you beforehand. MySpace, I don't think even exists anymore. That's kind of like the abandoned amusement park of the internet. So, yeah, if it's there, I'm there somewhere. ChrisMoonPsychic.com if you want to keep up with where I am, what I'm doing, tour dates around the world, you can catch it there. And then Paranormal Investigator Magazine is my latest project. So, I apologize really quick. I know we were running late today. We had some crazy technical issues, but I want to give you guys the opportunity. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, start right here. Yeah. Hmm. Absolutely. That's a great question. And that when we first started talking to Andrew Borden, he was coming through in that really deep New England accent. It was very almost impossible to understand some of the things he was saying. He was using very old language, for lack of a better term. And it's interesting, the longer that we've communicated with him through the device, he starts using slang to communicate with us. And especially when it comes to cursing, he's learned a whole new vocabulary. Yeah, it's amazing. And people who always, question it, it's good for me in a strange way, because people who question the device are always like, well, what's to say it's not just radio waves that are coming through and doing these types of things? We have this thing called the FCC, and they have very specific words that cannot come through. And Andrew Borden, every single time we talk to him, breaks those rules about 100 times over. So, yeah, he definitely does pick up on modern language and use it. Yes. Right. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Tyler works on the project just like I work on the project. We're kind of consider ourselves useful idiots for Edison, basically. We all have our specific thing that we do. But yeah, everybody has spirit guides. Everybody has something around them, 1, 2, 10. Some people have more than that. And sometimes when I do private readings, people will just want to talk to their guides, and that's a pretty incredible experience too, to find out how many energies are around them from the very beginning. So, yeah. Yes. We didn't plan a tour. We usually do it at nighttime. We take everybody out to the haunted building, and we turn out the devices and do the whole thing. But yeah, hopefully next year. We'll do it next year. Absolutely. Hi. Right. Well, a lot of people talk about that being synchronicity when you start seeing the matching numbers come up like that. Usually, like deja vu, they say that means you're in the right place. If you're seeing those things happen on a consistent basis, or if you're having the visions that you were there before, that means that you're on the right path and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're supposed to only worry when you don't see those things anymore. So I believe that. Absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right, the witching hour. Everybody talks about that dead time and things like that. Usually I don't think that there's anything magic about that time, but I think what it is that's when the world's most quiet. People have either come home and gone to bed, or people are just getting up to start up the morning. So I think we're more aware of our surroundings, and that animal instinct kind of kicks in at that point. We hear everything that's around us. So that's my personal opinion on it. I don't know if there's anything special about that time or not, though. Any other questions, guys? Am I missing anybody? Yeah. No, they work for free, per gratis. Yeah, they. No, it's interesting. We go in, like I'll give you an example. A couple of nights ago, I was at Eastern Kentucky University, and we got there and we started doing our investigation, and we got into an old theater that was in there, and we used night vision to kind of see if they're there, and we turned on the night vision camera, and you could watch as we were talking. We said, if anybody wants to come forward and speak through the telephone, please come forward now. And you see all these orbs come into the room and start flying towards us in the camera at that point. We turned on the device, and it turns out that we had no idea what we were walking into, but we actually did a mass crossing of spirits that night. They were attracted to the machine, and they knew that we could hear them and help them cross over. So I like to think that we're doing a service for them by putting their voice out there and getting that message across for them too. So since money means nothing to them anymore, hopefully we're doing something good for them on that side. Yeah. Yes. Most of the time when we turn the machine on, we will get somebody who comes through, either a family member or a spirit that's associated with the building or whatever the case might be. And I've got a lot of theories as to why that happens. I think sometimes, since time doesn't really exist on that side, I think that these things have already been kind of planted here. All the answers and the things that come through are already here beforehand, and we're just kind of catching up to it, if that makes sense. So basically we're walking into that time and hearing those things at that point. Yeah. Oh, sure. Right. Uh-huh. They definitely can. Yeah, spirits, free will. They'll follow you anywhere that they choose to go. There's not a lot you can do about that. If you do pick up a spirit, they will be with you. The only thing I encourage people to do, if you find somebody you don't want with you at that time, it sounds really cheesy when you say it, but you basically have to give them the cold shoulder. You have to tell them, hey, I don't want you around. And at that point, most people will, spirits will back off at that point. But they do have free will, absolutely. Yes. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing. Belief systems are very strong, and not to discount anyone's beliefs. That's not what I'm doing. But anytime that you or a group of people put in energy and a belief into something, usually you'll see that come through and it'll work. And we had a really interesting thing that happened with the documentary that I did a while back. They took footage of me using the telephone to a tribe in Africa. And there was an actual witch doctor that was there that was witnessing what was playing through. They gave him no information on what was happening, and he didn't speak the language. But in his language, he came through and said, this man is contacting the dead, and these are dead people who are coming through because he believes that this works, and that's the reason that this takes place, which tells you that the rituals and the belief system really has everything to do with it at that point. But we have gone through different rituals and had a lot of success doing that. Yeah. Yes? Yeah, sometimes we'll get little glimpses of the future, but there do appear to be rules on that side. Even when we ask questions about what it's like over there, they're very guarded about certain things. You get very generic answers sometimes about more beautiful than you can possibly imagine, things along those lines. The one thing I kind of slipped through, and I think Tyler gave me information I don't know if I was supposed to get or not, but it really kind of blew me away, is he told me, and I'm going to try to simplify this a little bit because it was just insane, that there is no physical reality on the other side. Essentially, it's all energy. So basically, you project out your heaven. You project out your utopia. And you have a soul circle of people, your family, your friends that are on that other side, and they project out their reality, and you share that common reality at that point. It's amazing. Somebody said that to me, and I went back inside and said, yeah, very similar to it. Yeah, so you actually do project out your actual reality. Yes? I do. I always say that I've actually been possessed 3 separate times. And, yeah, I do believe in exorcisms. I don't necessarily buy into some of the religious aspects of the exorcisms. I really think that, again, it goes down to that belief system. If somebody can pull that belief system out of you and bring that through, that you can actually get rid of the entities that way. And I actually lost almost 4 weeks of my life at one point from possession. So they are very real, and you have to be very, very cautious. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry, I could barely hear you. I'm sorry. Well, I'll give you the quick story behind it. I was doing an event out in New Orleans, and we decided that it was right around Mardi Gras. We were doing it right afterwards. So we made the decision to go down to Mardi Gras to do what you do during Mardi Gras, which is to have a good time, and kind of lost ourselves in the whole idea of it, and we're getting ready to do the event. So the next day after Mardi Gras, we actually got up that morning, and I respect all religions, but we were walking down the street, and a girl that I knew actually got one of the ash crosses on her head for Ash Wednesday. And for some reason, I was enraged why she did this. I don't know why. I couldn't explain it. And I was angry with myself for being upset. But it felt like I was almost coming down with the flu, is the only way to describe it. And pretty soon, over this time period, it felt like I was witnessing things that were taking place, but I didn't feel right. Then I felt like almost a passenger in my own body. Things were taking place that I had no control over. And eventually it got to the point where I literally lost all memory of everything that had taken place. And they'll show me video clips of things that happened during that time now. And I look at it, and it's like looking at a stranger. It's me, but it was definitely not me, if that makes sense. And it took a very good friend of mine who is an exorcist to actually bring me back through, bring me back around. Yes. I do. It seems we talk about energy not being able to be created nor destroyed, but we do have to come from a certain source. And when they talk about the energy, they talk about the well, which apparently all spirit energy comes from this one source. And they talk about us coming back several times where we work together on this side and the other side. Sometimes we're here, sometimes we're there, sometimes we're working side by side that way. And the soul circle is what actually takes you through the lessons, and you go through several different lifetimes trying to learn these lessons. And basically, while you're on the other side, you have to go through, you set up your own reality at that point. You have to set up the lessons that you're going to learn, and it's your job when you get here through free will to actually make that happen. So I absolutely do believe in reincarnation. Yes. Yes. Very much so. Yes. that's when we get into these discussions about what takes place on the other side. And whenever I bring up the word God or I use specific, religious names and things like that, they always come back to universe. Whenever I say, is God there? Are you with God? They'll usually say, yes, we're within the universe, which to me is kind of the universal term for God. So, yeah, nothing very specific, though. Yes. No. I tell people, when I announced it, I was on Coast to Coast Radio. And I said, Frank's built this machine and it works and so on and so forth. And of course, everybody thought we were nuts when we talked about it. But immediately, everybody wanted to get one of these things. And, Frank only builds so many. He's a physical medium. He builds them. And it takes mediumship ability to actually use the device correctly. So people would go out and start trying to make something that sounded like it, to the point that they were taking Radio Shack radios and they would pull a pin and it would just scan radio dials back and forth. People would make up stories around it and things like that. So I tell people, there's really no reality to that. But people still do it anyway. So I just tell people, be cautious, because again, if you put the energy into it, you don't know what's going to come through. So absolutely. Any other questions, guys? All right. Oh. The only way that it happens is Frank contacts me and tells me he's built the latest one, and at that point I go and pick it up. That's how it works. I put them in my museum. We basically have a ghost box museum. Absolutely. Oh, sure, go ahead. Right. Yeah, Halloween, I think the whole idea behind it is that everybody's concentrating on the day and what it means. And I think a lot of spirits take advantage of that collective energy, and they'll show themselves more on that night. I did have a ghost hunt on a campus 2 years ago, and we saw 3 full-bodied apparitions on Halloween, which was absolutely incredible. That does not happen very often. So, yeah, I think it's that collective energy that makes it happen. Yes. Okay, guys, well, thank you for having me out. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.